Welcome to A Slob Comes Clean, the podcast. I am Dana K. White. I share my personal deslobification process. As I figure out ways to keep my own home under control, I share the truth about cleaning and organizing strategies that actually work in real life for real people who don't love cleaning and organizing. Thanks for joining me today. This is podcast number 434. And I think I'm going to call it Prepping the House for Special Events. So it is the holiday season. I believe this is coming out right around Thanksgiving. So I'm trying to get things done ahead of time because of having kids come home for Thanksgiving, different times, different parts of the week. But I want to be able to enjoy that week with my family. And then I will be recording my audiobook for my book that comes out in February. I kind of mumbled that there, but yes, I do have a book coming out. So anyway, I haven't really talked much about it. I have occasionally, some of y'all have found it, but it will be coming out in February. So I will be out of the office and in the audiobook studio. I never get to travel though. I know here I'm just randomly talking and some of y'all are like, this is the first time I've ever listened to this lady and she's super rambly. Well, welcome. Audiobooks are not rambly because they actually are read from a written book that has been edited and all that. This is the stream of consciousness that you're listening to right now. Anyway, I just get to drive an hour every day to go record my audiobook. And I see some other people who are like, I'm in New York City for the week recording my audiobook. And I'm like, I want to go to New York City, but whatever. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But anyway, so all that to say, I am trying to get some things done ahead of time. So I think this one is coming out right around Thanksgiving, or maybe on Thanksgiving Day. I'm not for sure. And some of y'all might be like, well, why did you not release this sooner? And I'm like, well, sorry. But Christmas is coming up. This is the holiday season. This is the time where a lot of us who don't necessarily, we may not be the hostesses with the mostesses. I mean, we may not be the ones who are constantly having people over, but this might be the time of year when we actually do, right? I am actually hosting Thanksgiving at my house, which is in the future as I'm recording this. And so I was thinking about the stuff that I am doing to get ready. And I was thinking, okay, well, this will be hopefully helpful for some of you who are perhaps having, either your kids are having a party with their friends, or you are thinking about having a New Year's Eve party, or you're thinking about, or you're hosting some people for Christmas, whether it's like a party or some family that's coming and staying with you or whatever. Just some ways to think about this. So I have talked a lot in the past in a much more organized fashion about how to get your home ready for guests. So I'm going to link in the show notes we've been doing these FAQ posts over on the blog at aslobcomesclean.com where we take some questions that we get pretty regularly and we put together all the different places where I have written about, talked about, videoed the answers to that question, right? And so we put all those together. So I'll link to that here. But the reason why I want to go through this is sometimes it's like, oh, I'm in the middle of the crazy season and I've maybe come a long way and my house is not as disastrous as it once was because, my 14 days to opening your front door to guests, which is an ebook, you can get that at aslobcomesclean.com/14, like 1-4. That leads you through, I don't care how overwhelmed you are, your house could be an absolute disaster to, I'm going to have this ready in 2 weeks. And it's not just about how to do it, but also how to adjust your expectations and make it realistic and make it practical and all that. But even when the house is at a point that you're like, oh, this is pretty good, I can have people over and not have a ton of warning. There's something about this time of year that or having these big events that makes me go, oh, now I'm seeing things that I maybe wouldn't otherwise. And they would be okay. They wouldn't be the end of the world for those things to be out and shown and seen by guests. But I'm like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity, right? And also, I will feel better if I get these things done. So, the things that I try to think about in these types of situations, okay, where I am having people over is first of all, what are people actually going to see? That's the number one thing to remind myself. Y'all know I have the visibility rule with decluttering, right? Like that my rule is this is how I prioritize my decluttering projects in general, totally in any situation, is let me start in the visible areas first because I'm going to experience the benefits of my decluttering sooner and in a more impactful way if I will focus in visible areas. Because the people who live in my house are going to see the progress happening. And I'm just telling you, it may feel like they'll never notice, but it starts to change how everybody sees the house when it's invisible air, not invisible, but in visible areas that you're making progress, right? Also, I inspire myself to keep going when I do that. Like, I see the progress I'm making, and it makes all the effort that I'm putting in feel so worth it because I'm like, "Oh, that looks so good." And it inspires me to keep going, right? So that's a way for me to build momentum as opposed to putting a lot of effort in and feeling like, well, what was that worth? If I'm decluttering in a visible space, then I see the progress that I'm making. I'm inspired to keep working and making more progress. It also is, it improves my everyday life because the unexpected times where somebody's going to be coming into my house are the most, when my house was a complete disaster and life happened because life always happens. Life happened and I needed, either I wanted to have somebody come over or I had to have someone come over because we needed someone to deal with our plumbing or whatever. When my house was such a disaster that I was like, "Oh my goodness, this thing that should not be that big of a deal has turned into this incredibly frustrating and daunting and literally would drive me to tears thing because there's so much to do to even be able to let someone in my house." Like, that is so disheartening, right? And so focusing on my visible areas and being able to go, "Oh, I can open the door when I need to. Oh, I can do this." That is just incredibly powerful, right? So, number one question when I'm prepping my house for a special event is, what are people actually going to see? Okay, like what parts are they going to see so that I do not get distracted when I get overwhelmed, because that's what tends to happen, and start painting the utility room or whatever. Do y'all have a utility room? Do I have a utility room? I don't know. Anyway, but that's the kind of thing that would happen is I would start painting this bizarre thing and it's like, "Wait a minute. Nobody's actually going to see this." All right? And here's the other thing. The next question that's really important is, what are we going to be doing? Like, what is it that we're going to be doing? Because that needs to be the focus in what I'm working on in my house, right? If I'm doing a gift wrapping party for my daughter's drill team, which she's not on anymore because she's in college, but like this is the kind of thing that we would do, right? It's like, let's get together, the moms are going to get together and we're going to wrap all of the whatever special gifts are being given to them from the booster club, right? And the opportunity is there for me to offer my space. Okay. So, like, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be wrapping the gifts. Okay. So, what is it that I would otherwise tend to focus on that in no way is going to be needed considering what we're going to be doing? If we're working on wrapping these gifts, for me to have spent my time painting the utility room that no one's even going to see, or even if they do see, because I say, "Hey, can you, we need two more pairs of scissors. Can you run in there in that room right there?" Literally, no one's going to care if that's painted, right? Like, it's not going to be that's not the focus. And so these are the things that I ask myself and I remind myself because I tend to be the person who doesn't consider these things and who does get distracted on the things that don't matter, right? And so zeroing in on what people actually see, what are we going to be doing? Along with that goes, what functions do these spaces need to perform, right? Like, what is the function of this space for what we're going to be doing? If we're going to be wrapping gifts, then we probably need tables, right? And so, like, what's the table space situation? If it's, if I've got some foldable tables, am I going to put those in my living room or whatever? Like, what is the function here? Because that determines what needs to be done. Not the list of everything that could be done or that I would like to do, but what has to be done, because I have to identify what has to be done in order for me to have these people over. So if the function of the space is that we're going to need to wrap gifts there, then I need all the seating to just be seating and not be storage. And if I have been leaving my pile of mail that I've been putting off dealing with, and I've been throwing that into a chair that's actually going to be needed for someone to sit in order to wrap gifts. Well, those are the things that my eyes are open to and I see differently when I am really drilling down and identifying, like, what is the function of this space need to be? Now, if we're talking about the holidays, the function of this space is likely going to be that I'm going to need to cook in this space. Maybe you do or don't cook a lot the rest of the year, but this might be the time of year when you have some cooking things that you do. You like to make a Christmas morning breakfast. You like to make, some cake balls or, whatever it is that is your thing that you like to do. And it's like, okay, that's the function of this space. So not just what does this space need to look like, but like I need counter space. I need clear. If you like to do this on your table, I need a clear table. I need for things to actually be gone and open space for me to achieve let this room serve the purpose for the function that I need to do in here. If it's that we're going to eat all together, okay, well then I need enough eating space for all the people. I've got a lot of people. I think our whole entire family is going to be here for Thanksgiving, this year, and which I know is already in the past for y'all as you're listening to this. But that us all being there for Thanksgiving means that, okay, I've got to set up another table, like another space for us to be able for everybody to sit down and eat, right? And so that changes how I look at my space. It's like, okay, well, this is great for the way this is, but actually we're going to need to put a whole nother table in here, which means that I need to deal with this little thing that's over here in the corner that I've been like, oh, that's fine. That's no big deal. No, that actually has to be dealt with now, right? So that goes on my list. Of course, number 1, well, not number 1, because you need to know what needs to be done. But as you look at this list of things that need to be done, and when you're acknowledging what places people are going to see, what we're going to do, what functions, do these spaces need to perform, I make my list of all the things that need to be done for that. And then I look at how much time I have. How much time do I actually have? And how much can I realistically get done? Okay. It doesn't mean that I take things immediately off my list unless something was on my list that I go, you know what? Actually, no one's going to see that. I'm going to take that off my list for now. Oh, you know what? Actually, that is not necessary or helpful for us to be able to function this. That I'm not going to worry about right now. But I prioritize my lists. I say these are the things that have to be done or we can't do it. And these are the things I would like to be done. At the top is the stuff that absolutely has to be done, going down in order of priority into the stuff that doesn't have to be done quite as much. And I mean, it doesn't absolutely have to be done. Like I want it to be done. I'll be frustrated if it's not, but we could still function and do the thing we need to do, even if it's not done. Right. So looking at how much time do I realistically have, like, is this party that I'm hosting in 3 days? Is my mother coming in 3 weeks? Like, what is it that needs to be done? Another thing too, as far as a function of this, of a space, and this was one for me that was, huge. And I'm kind of going back up there, but was when my kids were younger and I was really working on my dislopification process, it was a moment for me to realize I wanted my living room to function as the space where we could open Christmas gifts and take pictures without worrying about what was or wasn't in the shot. Like that was the function of that space. And so it changed how I looked at that space. This was all along the time of me understanding, oh, a living room is for living. It's not for storage, and trying to just get out anything that was just being stored in there. And instead look at that space as it's got to be for the purpose of living, which at Christmas time, that was what I wanted. I really wanted to be able to open our gifts and not have to, you know, try to angle the picture so that it didn't see, the piles of things that were stored, which were really just piles of junk, in the corner or whatever. So that, even if you're not having anyone come over, if you really zero in and focus on that, what is the function of our living room or of my living room? If live alone, whatever, even if you don't have kids and you have a roommate and all that, but like, what is it that I want this function to be? Even if it's just for me for this holiday season, I want to be able to, on Christmas morning, sit down guilt free with my cup of coffee and watch the Disney Christmas parade, or whatever. Like, I want to be able to do that and not have anything in this room that makes me feel guilty for sitting around and enjoying Christmas morning because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've got that I never took care of and that I never took care of. Like, think of that function of that space, whatever it is that you need it to be, right? So realistically, I am, as I am right at 2 weeks from when I will start having people come to my house for Thanksgiving, when my kids will start coming home. And I really don't want to be in oh my goodness, I got to, check through my list at this point. I want to be done by then. Realistically, though, we have a very dear friend who is in the hospital right now. And we're trying when we can to go and visit this friend because that's really, really important to us. And my husband just this morning, as I'm recording this, said, "So are we going to try to go again on Saturday?" And I was like, my heart immediately went, well, of course. But then my heart also went, oh my goodness, I have things that I was going to get done before Thanksgiving, right? To be ready. And so that is a realistic adjustment, but realistically adjusting in my brain and acknowledging that I might not be home on Saturday to piddle around and check things off this list. In some ways, it's like, but it also makes me so much more aware of my awkward pauses this week. Like, knowing that and acknowledging it instead of just living life living in denial that I'm not going to have Saturday, right? Like, being realistic and thinking ahead and going, what time do I have? What time don't I have? Then helps me go, okay, I've got 15 minutes. I could tackle one of these tasks that I have on my list of things that I really want to get done before we, start celebrating the holidays. Okay. So what are some things that I've done? So, just kind of a frame of reference in case you're new here and you've hung with us that long, which is hard to imagine. I have been at my dislobification process for 15 years now, and my house is functional where it used to not be functional. Like, I used to be the person who, just for reference, it took me the year before I started this blog, I think it was, which is theslobcomesclean.com, was my attempt to get my house under control while writing about it and figuring it out. I said no to everything from August on because I was hosting Thanksgiving at my house for the first time. And I now I'm like, oh my goodness, that's in 2 weeks. Whew, okay. And I'm fine. Like, if we end up going to the hospital every single spare minute that we have and we don't get to do anything else with the house, I'd be okay. Right? Like, there'd be things that I'm like, oh, so that gives you an idea of where I am now, right? But I still have things that I want to do. So at this point, the downstairs is mostly ready with a quick pickup. That's where people will for sure be. But I do want to go deeper, right? Because we are going to have, my parents are going to stay a night or two. And anyway, so I am using this motivation to do more to be sure that I haven't missed anything. So this morning I did step one. Look, always look. I took a tour specifically of my upstairs. So if y'all have been around a while, you know that I moved, actually it's right around almost it might be today. I think it might be exactly 3 years ago today as I'm recording this. But I moved 3 years ago and we now have an upstairs, right? My kids' rooms are upstairs. And I kind of avoid that space. So yeah. And I always knew it would be that way, right? If I ever had an upstairs, but I don't go up there that often just for the fun of it, right? Like, it's not a thing. But I knew that I needed to get an actual realistic understanding of what needs to happen up there because I have one who's at home who likes to use his brother's room as his own storage room. And, I don't want that brother to come home and his room is a storage room and, stuff like that. And I mean, y'all, there is a box up there in the hallway. I think it's been there since we moved. And it has just never registered. But when I went up there today, it's kind of in a little corner where you don't see it necessarily. Like it's not blocking anything. But I just went, oh my goodness, this has been sitting here and things have been added to it that I'm like, wait, what? And so that's on my list. That's like number one thing on my list because my parents are going to stay up there. And so it's just always looking, always look is a decluttering strategy. Okay. And it's today I knew that I didn't have time before I came out to work. I didn't have time to actually tackle the upstairs. Right. And the old me would have been like, well, I don't have time to tackle the upstairs. So why would I even go up there? Right. Like I'm going to wait until I have time to do that. The me now knows the power of knowing what I'm dealing with. So my only purpose in going upstairs this morning was just so I would know what I was dealing with. That's it. I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to look around. For those of us who struggle with clutter, we tend to get overwhelmed. And I say this as someone who has shared my own struggles and had thousands and thousands of people say, oh, me too. Oh my goodness, that's exactly how I feel. Okay. So I'm saying that I'm speaking from that perspective. Okay. That's my unique perspective. But we tend to get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things that need to be done. And then we shut down and then the volume increases as things get added to that because we were too overwhelmed to do them. And so they just kind of get piled on, right? And then knowing it's a pile, knowing there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done makes us not want to even acknowledge it until this, hypothetical time in the future where I'm going to have all this energy to be able to do that. So that doesn't go well. And so just giving myself permission to look and just take a tour and see what needs to be done, see what the actual state of things is up there. I'm doing that with no pressure. Like I am literally telling myself as I walk upstairs, this is a pressure-free task that I'm doing because I'm not actually going to do any work when I go up there. I didn't even take my list yet. I just went and looked. And I found some things that surprised me, right? But as I went and I looked, I now 4 or 5 hours later, my brain is sorting out what is actually there to be dealt with. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that super quick and easy. That'll make a big difference. Okay. Yeah. All right. So wait, was that a pillow that had never been taken out of the package? So it was still the shrink wrap, thing that you get. Was that wasn't it? Okay. Yeah, that can go there. Like my brain starts to adjust to what it is because it's no longer the unknown. So literally the only thing I was doing by going and looking was removing overwhelm based on the unknown. That's it. That's all I was doing. And it was incredibly valuable. Okay. So the next thing to do is to go up there with my paper and pencil and start jotting down the things that I would like to get done so that when I have awkward pauses, when I have 15 minutes between, oh, I actually got home. I don't really need to start dinner for another 15 minutes. Okay, I can get something. I've got a list to do because I have this weighing thing on my mind that, oh, we're hosting people in 2 weeks. So that is kind of this constant buzz in my brain of, oh my goodness, this thing. But every time I have an awkward pause, I know exactly what I can do to accomplish something to get me toward where I want to be in 2 weeks. And I can check something off. And every time I do that, that buzz just quiets a little, right? It quiets a little. So a couple of things that I want to do that are on my list of things that I want to do. And I'm just kind of sharing that with you. Like, so before that, that's how you apply it to your own stuff, but maybe this will help you. So yeah, I talked about the box of random stuff in the hallway. There's 2 bags of trash in my daughter's room that never got brought down. So I think she cleaned up in there at the end of the summer and trashed a bunch of stuff. And somehow those 2 trash bags are still up there. So I'm like, oh, we just need to bring those down. And I know as I'm saying this, I'm like, why did I not bring those down with me when but whatever. I don't worry about that. Right. But that stuff is going to make a huge impact really easily with no like mental energy expended. And that's the best kind, right? Impact without mental energy expended. Uh, it's also made me realize, okay, we're in a pretty good state. The back patio, that's the thing that is driving me bananas, is the biggest thing that I have to do. That is the biggest thing. And I am delegating that, thankfully, to someone else in my house. And that's going to be his job. Like that is his job, is to deal with the back patio. Because that's a realistic thing is it's supposed to, I even looked it up, and it's supposed to be beautiful on Thanksgiving Day here in Texas, which is wonderful and great. And so we'll want to, I'd like it to be a possibility that people could hang out on the patio. But as it is right now, I'd be like, oh no, that looks terrible. So that is the thing to do the best that we can do in the time that we have to get, and we 2 weeks will be perfectly fine, right? But if I don't think about it, then all of a sudden, because I don't necessarily consider that all the time, and y'all know I have slob vision, which means it doesn't register to me. But because I know, oh, I would actually be embarrassed for people to go out there because there's a pile of weeds that I pulled and just threw there, and then blah, 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 like that kind of thing. And so that is number one top priority for this. Other things, I would like to spruce up the entry to the house, like spruce up, not the inside entryway, it's fine, but the outside, just get it a little bit cuter, get it a little bit cleaned up, just to make it for the first impression. That's one of those things that probably won't take me that long, but I need it to be on the list because I don't come in through that door and it does not register in my brain very often, except when I happen to come in that door and think, oh my goodness, I need to, spruce this up a little bit, right? One of the main things I want to do that's been driving me bananas because I've seen it and I'm like, I'll tackle one here and there, but I want to go through the whole house with magic eraser for smudges around doorknobs and light switches. Like, yeah, that's just one of the things, right? Like that's on that, which I'm excited to be at the point where that can be kind of one of the main things on my list, right? Another thing I'm going to do is go in and open all my cabinets and see what people will see when they're here for Thanksgiving dinner. And they're like, hey, do you have a platter that I can use for such and such? And I'm like, yeah, it's in that thing. I want to see what they're going to see when they get in there. Specifically, y'all, my husband, have I told y'all this story? He loves that Dave's Killer bread. I don't know. I've never eaten it, but he likes the one with all the seeds. And one of the seeds is black. Therefore, it looks like a mouse poop, which freaks me right out. So I am constantly freaked out by that and try. So I'm like, it's one of my goals before people get here to go look through the cabinet where the toaster is and all, and just make sure that it does not look like there is mouse poop in there if somebody was to open that cabinet, right? Mouse poo seeds. Anyway, this morning or last night, we were doing a grocery order and my son was doing the order and he was like, so, what's that kind of bread you like, Dad? And I was like, look on there and search seeds that look like mouse poop. And it somehow didn't have it there. Anyway, I thought it was funny. They didn't think it was that funny. Okay. These are times when I want to check things like my oven. People are going to be opening my oven more than they would other times because it's Thanksgiving and people bring their stuff and they want to help out. And it's like, oh, I need to double check my oven, make sure it's not embarrassingly messy, right? My ice maker. I mentioned this in a recent podcast that I cleaned out my ice maker. That's one of those things that it doesn't register for a while. And then I realize, oh, ooh, yeah, I really need to get that looking a little fresher and cleaner, right? So I prioritize my tasks according to what is going to help the function of this space. What's going to help the function of this space? What are people actually going to see? And ultimately, it comes down to if I only have X amount of time, I have to prioritize the things that make it possible for me to host. whether that's making it possible for me to be willing to open my front door or possible for me to be able to serve the people who are coming into my house in the way that I want to do that, right? And number one thing, this is a great opportunity to see the power of dealing with your procrastinator first. Okay. Procrastinator is the stuff that feels like, no, 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 this is too big of a deal right now. I shouldn't spend this precious time folding clothes and putting them away. No, 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 I shouldn't do that. But if we don't fold the clothes that were on the sofa in a big pile that we're potentially going to keep anybody from actually sitting on that sofa, if I don't do that, then all the work I'm doing, it still looks embarrassingly messy because of all the stuff on the couch. And that couch can't serve its function, right? Like it can't do the thing it is meant to do because it's covered in that. So procrastinator is easy stuff. So I have my 5-step no mess decluttering process. Starts with trash. Second step is easy stuff that already has an established home, but for whatever reason, it's not there. There's a reason we start with trash because that goes straight into the trash bag. It makes an immediate impact. It needs to be dealt with anyway. The easy stuff does involve taking it to where it goes, but it's easy because I already know what to do with. But so many times it's easy to skip that step because you think, oh, I'll deal with that later because it's easy. No, no, no. Go ahead and get it out of the way now because so many times what I find is that a lot of the stuff I'm dealing with in these moments where I otherwise can get very overwhelmed is ultimately easy stuff. It just needs to be dealt with. And the more that I deal with it, the more I'm able to tackle and feel confident that I can do all the things that I need to do, right? So don't put off procrastinator. That's the number 1, 2 after trash, right? But the number one thing to deal with in your home. Like go ahead and deal with the procrastinator because that is incredibly powerful. Like tackle the procrastinator with any awkward pause that you have. Like if you have a date where you're like, I want to by Christmas have my living room be a place where we can relax as a family, watch a movie, I can take pictures and I don't have to worry about what's in the background, right? Zero in on right now as you're listening even. And as you move into another podcast episode that, of whatever other podcast you listen to, I'm going to take this time and I'm going to focus on my procrastinator. Like I can work on some sort of procrastinator, something that I already know what to do with it. I just have to do it with any 5-minute pause or 3-minute pause or 20-minute pause that I have. I can work on that. And that is going to take you so much farther than you could ever imagine. Like it's so powerful to get that procrastinator dealt with. All right. I hope this was helpful. And I will talk to y'all next week. Bye.